Dassault. Dassault Aviation. Apparently, it's Dassault. I don't know why I thought it was Dassault or Dassault. The French multi-role single-engine 4th generation jet fighter that was developed by Dassault Aviation and introduced into the early 1980s is, of course, the Mirage 2000C. It's renowned for its versatility and advanced technology for its time, but doesn't make a good RC airplane. I'm Alex from Hangar 14 RC, and here's everything you need to know before you fly the Freewing 80mm Mirage 2000C. The Freewing Mirage has been around for a few years now and is currently on its V2 variant. With a total length of 49.2 inches and a wingspan of just 31.1 inches, this Delta Wing jet fighter absolutely tears up the sky with its upgraded 12-bladed 80mm ducted fan. Powered by a 2150 kV brushless motor, 100 amp speed control, and running off the recommended 6S 4000 milliamp LiPo pack, this thing is by no means slow. The Mirage is currently offered as a plug-and-play model, meaning that all you need to complete it is a receiver to bind to your radio and a compatible size battery. For this one, I chose to use my trusty DX6, which I've ran for quite a while, and paired it with a Spectrum AR630 that we have installed on the inside. Now, there is some assembly required to building this model, which includes things like gluing the exhaust nozzle onto the rest of the fuselage, installing the vertical stabilizer and running the servo wires up to the front, as well as screwing in the main landing gear into the wings and then installing the wings to the fuselage. The finishing touches are added by gluing on the drop tank rails and some additional plastic details that you can find throughout the rest of the plane. Overall, a pretty simple assembly that will only take you a matter of a few hours in the afternoon. And once assembled, you have a fantastic looking model jet that has a great amount of detail with things like decals, panel lines, and even a detailed cockpit. Now, this Mirage is equipped with electronic retracts and a working gear door for the front nose gear, and these retracts are actually pretty robust and have some working suspension components to them, like most aircraft of this size from Freewing. You do have the option as well to install the included Tiger Meat livery if you choose to do so. I obviously did not choose to do that. I chose to keep the original color scheme on this one, and I can imagine that installing those decals would help visibility quite a bit since you are dealing with mostly just different shades of gray in a camouflage pattern like you see here. With this plane, we have a total of 4 servos, one for each elevon, one for the rudder, and one for the nose gear, all of which are the Freewing digital hybrid metal gear servos that come in most of their planes, and they come already installed and connected to their control surfaces. So that is the basic overview of this Mirage 2000. Now, odds are, if you've been checking this thing out online and looking at it for a little bit, you probably already knew most of that information by now. But what I'm really here to talk about is some of the things that I've actually learned while owning and flying this model plane. The good, the maybe not so good, and some insight on things you should definitely know before you go out for your first flight. Now, just a little disclaimer here that I think is important for you as a viewer to know before going into the rest of the video. This video is not sponsored by Freewing or Motion RC or anything like that. I purchased this plane on my own behalf with my own money because I simply wanted it. And while I am an affiliate with Motion RC and may include links to products to help support the channel, my opinions and experiences shared here are entirely my own, and I will give you my honest thoughts and opinions on everything you see here on this channel. So let's start with the good. I think this plane is set up really well right out of the gate. It sounds incredible with the upgraded 12-bladed ducted fan, and the motor, fan, ESC, and battery combo are more than enough for this plane, which means that it moves out in a quick hurry. This is by far the fastest plane that I currently own. But unlike the SR-71 that we talked about a little bit ago in a previous video, it doesn't need to fly at that top speed to stay airborne. This thing actually has a very good low speed flight characteristic to it. It can hold at high alpha incredibly well, and it slows down really nice to come in for a landing. With the Delta Wing design of the Mirage 2000, your stalls will typically just consist of the nose dropping when you hit a low airspeed. One of the benefits of the Delta Wing design, actually. It's actually really stable. Now, one of the things I'm always worried about with any EDF jet that I personally get is, am I going to be able to actually take this off of a grass runway? Now, our local flying club is a grass runway only, which can be pretty brutal on EDF jets and their retracts. And while the landing gear have definitely taken some impacts and maybe loosened up a little bit from the flights that we have on it, I would say that they've actually held up really well. The power that this plane has is able to get it off the ground relatively quickly, and it's able to slow down for some nice soft landings, which has definitely helped keep the undercarriage of this plane in one piece. Transporting this thing to and from the field is actually pretty easy as well. I've been able to transport this in the trunk of my car with both the landing gear up and extended fully. The small wingspan is definitely the key to this, as well as the detachable nose cone that just snaps on with a few magnets. I can also store it nicely in one piece on my rack back here, which is an additional bonus. I don't have to disassemble it for storage. Now, there are a lot of great things about this Mirage 2000, but there are some things that I have noticed throughout my ownership of this plane that could, I guess, fall into the not so good category, or at least are worth noting. The first thing that I will say is that it's almost impossible to manage any sort of wiring throughout this plane. Now, that's not necessarily the fault of the manufacturer. I actually think they did the best with what they could when it comes down to the actual design of the Mirage. The actual design and shape of the Mirage 2000, it gets pretty tight inside the plane, which makes running things like the servo wires and keeping everything organized and neat, it's gonna test your patience a little bit. The best thing to do here is to grab a piece of wire, bend the hook on the end of it, and kind of use it to snake up the wires where they need to be. Secondly, I love the fact that this thing has a working gear door for the front nose gear. However, the way it works is a little bit different. Basically, it has this spring that's attached to the door, and when the landing gear are retracted, it gets pushed upwards by that front nose gear, pulling the door up and holding it closed. Now, honestly, it's a pretty simple design, and it makes sense, and it saves the need for an additional servo up there, but it just kind of looks a bit out of place if you really look at it. It's also really easy to accidentally hit this door and close it without realizing it when you're handling the plane or moving it around or just taxiing it out to the runway. And if you don't catch it and you take off and you go to pull up your retracts, it could cause some issues with binding or potentially even breaking this front door. Again, not the end of the world here, just something that I thought was a bit interesting. And finally, the last little thing that I would put into this category is these drop tanks here. Now, I think they look really good on the plane. They add that nice little scale touch to it, and they are easily removable, but I did have a couple of the magnets that actually hold them on come off of the actual drop tanks themselves. They came unglued. Now, that's nothing that's a little more glue couldn't fix, but if you do plan to use these, you might just want to double check them right away, as it did happen to both sides of the drop tanks. Now, with all that said and quite a few packs burned through, there are some things that I've learned while flying this thing that I think you should definitely know before you go ahead, pick this thing up, assemble it for yourself, and take it out for its first flight. Number one, and arguably the most important thing, is that this thing has an absolutely wicked roll rate. I have never seen a plane roll as fast as this thing does. Again, working with that small delta wing design, it's going to happen, but pairing that with the size of the elevons that are on this thing, as well as the amount of throw that they're capable of, inputting something like full aileron is absolutely nuts. That being said, I definitely recommend setting up dual rates for sure, and even some expo for both aileron and elevator control. Even with my low rates set to about 50%, this thing still loves to roll a ton, but adding in around 20 to 25% expo definitely helps smooth things out. Be easy on the sticks with this thing. Every pilot is a little bit different, and you can set it up what works best for you, but that's where I like to have mine, and typically I don't even run expo on any of the planes that I fly. Number two, if you're thinking about including some sort of AS3X or safe or gyro into this plane, you can do it with a 6-channel receiver and radio. However, it does take some roundabout solutions to do so, and you also don't get to have the reverse thrust option if you choose to do that. For me, that's fine. It was a sacrifice I was willing to make because I fly off a grass runway and it slows down really, really well. However, for those that fly off a paved runway, you're probably going to want to have that reverse thrust just so you don't go rolling right off the edge of the runway. So I do have this thing set up with AS3X currently with the DX6 and the AR630 receiver. However, I did have kind of a hell of a time setting it up. Since this is a delta wing airplane with elevons, you would normally select the elevon option in the aircraft type when setting up your radio. Now, what I didn't know at that time, however, is that this takes up an additional channel for some reason. It's almost like a ghost channel that setting takes up, meaning that there was no way for me to assign the AS3X to a switch on my radio to turn on and off or to cycle through different flight modes. What I ended up figuring out and doing was setting this plane up with a normal wing type and manually mixing the elevator and aileron channels together to get working elevons. What this did was allowed an open channel to assign my flight modes to, as well as the AS3X. So if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, you can let me know and I'll definitely make sure to do a video on exactly how I was able to set that up. Now that being said, I don't think AS3X or a gyro is really necessary on this plane, but I wanted to experiment with it, see what it would do. And what I can tell you is that you need very, very little input from the gyro here. Only between 5 and 10% gain is where you're gonna wanna sit, or you will get some pretty insane gyro wobble that can get pretty aggressive. My recommendation is to keep that gain very low and assign your AS3X or gyro to a flight mode and a switch that you can turn it off in case something does go wrong. Moving on to number 3, visibility does get a little bit tough with this plane, I'm not gonna lie. Again, you're dealing with a shade of gray camouflage color scheme and it's screaming through the air at like 120 miles an hour. Pair that with the insane roll rate that it has, it can be pretty easy to lose orientation at a moment's notice if you're not careful. Now if that's something you're worried about or something that you struggle with, I would recommend maybe putting that Tiger Meat decal on, or just something to give it a little more color or something creative in your own way to be able to keep track of the orientation of this plane just a little bit better. Number 4, buy a second battery pack because you're going to absolutely love flying this airplane. And while you do actually get a decent 3.5 to 4 minute flight time out of this thing, it's gonna leave you wanting more and it's gonna leave you wanting to fly it again and again. And when you only have one battery pack that takes over an hour to charge, it's a little bit of a bummer. Now, the unfortunate part here is that these battery packs are pretty pricey. They're right around $100 a piece at the moment, which is kind of a tough pill to swallow when it comes to powering RC planes. But trust me, as someone who only has one battery pack for this thing currently, I'm trying to get a second one as fast as I can because I do really enjoy flying it. And finally, number 5. This is a plane that I would argue takes a decent amount of skill to fly and keep under control. Now, I'm not saying that it flies bad by any means. I actually think it flies fantastic, but with how fast it goes, how fast it can roll, and its small profile in the sky, I would definitely recommend this for pilots who have either had EDF jets in the past or have a good amount of flight time under their belt. So overall, the Freewing 80mm Mirage 2000 V2 is a fantastic airplane. There are no doubts about it. It looks great, it flies really fast when you want it to, but then it can slow down when you need a breather. And it's sure to turn heads at your flying field. My only other thing that I will recommend if you're looking at picking up the Mirage 2000 is to get an afterburner with it. Trust me, it's like $17, it installs really easy, and it looks freaking awesome. I'm definitely gonna be hanging on to this one for a while as I do truly enjoy how this plane looks and how it flies, and I can't wait to get some more flights on it. So of course, if you're looking for your next EDF jet, I would definitely recommend keeping this one in mind. And if you want to check it out, I'll put a link to it down in the description below for you to do so, and it'd really help out the channel. It does help give a little bit of kickback so I can keep making videos just like this. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing. Actually, we just hit 2,000 subscribers here, which is just incredible. Sharing this hobby with others is by far my favorite part of doing all this, and by subscribing, commenting, liking the videos, and checking out some of the other videos on the channel, it keeps that going. So again, thank you all so very, very much. I truly appreciate it. I'm Alex from Hangar 14 RC, and we'll see you later.